So here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, sponsored by Restoration Ninja Marketing, and I'm so glad to be here. And my promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine. It's going to energize your business and help you stay social. Because after all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? I know I do. And welcome, James Bond. How are you doing today?
Oh, Lorraine, I'm awesome. Thank you for having me.
So why don't you tell my audience a little bit about what you do and who you serve?
Sure. I work with businesses that want to grow like crazy. I have tremendous experience. I'm actually one of America's leading behavioral management specialists. So I actually work with famous people like Warren Buffett's team and Saul Price, who founded the Price Club and stuff like that. But I do volunteer work for a small business administration, and I'm like very popular, which is kind of cool. And I wrote a book called Brain Glue, which is blowing people's minds because I discovered that there are the name of your business or how you describe your business or products can literally take off like gangbusters. I mean, like when I say gangbusters, let me give you an example. So John Gray was telling me that he wrote a book, fantastic, one of the best relationship books ever. They called it Men, Women, and Relationships. And people loved the book who read it, but nobody bought it. You know, he sold a few thousand copies. And he got this crazy idea. What if I changed the title to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? And then tweak the content a little. So he referred to it within the book, but it's still the same book. Almost overnight, 500,000 copies got sold, then 1 million, then 2 million, then 5 million. He sold 50 million copies. If you make $1 a book, even 50 cents a book, he makes over that. But let's say you make $1 a book at 50 million. I want that. How many of you out there want that? He went from 20,000 to 50 million copies just because he changed the title. And people don't realize when you change, there are certain titles of your product or your service. Like I had a construction company when I first learned how Brain Glue works. I had a construction company with 3 partners who after 10 years had $2 million in sales. That's not bad, right? $2 million in sales. Ha ha ha. In 1 year, I took them from 2 to 10 million in sales, and they reached 32 million 2 years later. And actually, not only did they have a ton of money coming in, they couldn't believe millions of dollars coming into each one of them, but they also were able to free up their time. They actually worked almost less and made millions. It went from 2 million to 32 million in sales. And it's just when they start to recognize the power of Brain Glue, people start to realize like, wow, I can make like more money than I've ever made before. There's a mom and her son in Utah, and they were watching Shark Tank, and they went like, it would be cool if we had like a side business that we can maybe go on Shark Tank or whatever else. But it inspired them to start a side business, okay? And so they're thinking, it takes a while because you have to come up with something that's really cool. Well, the mom was having trouble with a little bit of when she goes to the bathroom, and a doctor told her, well, raise your feet 6 inches to 8 inches above the ground when you're on the toilet, and it actually is better. She did that, and it worked really well. And she said, wow, maybe this is a product we can create. So they found somebody who could manufacture it for them and said, what are we going to call it? We could call it the toilet stool, but I don't think that'll really work well as a name, the toilet stool. My wife said she should have called it the stool, but I don't think that's a good title either. But so they're thinking, so toilet, what's another word for toilet? Potty. I'm kind of squatting. Squatty potty. Let's call it the squatty potty. In 18 months, in less than 2 years, this is a mom and her son that had no business experience. They went from 0 to $100 million of sales in less than 2 years because of the name. I was reading about Carrie Smith, and Carrie Smith started a small manufacturing company, and he started making some good money. So he had a friend that had a fan company and made really big fans that they sold to like farms. So in a barn, you're not going to put air conditioning if you have horses or cows. You're going to put a big fan up. So he got this fan. So he bought out his friend's fan company. He thought that would be really cool making fans. And he was doing okay. But one day he was trying to explain like these are not small fans. These are big ass fans. And he came up with the idea, why don't I run an ad for big ass fans and see what happens? And his sales exploded. Then he got this idea, wait a second. maybe I should change the name of the company to Big Ass Fans and put a logo. He has a really funny logo. He has a donkey with his butt facing you. So there's a donkey's ass. Okay, an ass's ass. Okay, and his head is off in the distance, turning and looking at you, and it says Big Ass Fans. Sales exploded, and I mean exploded. And so much so that he started offering other products, and he realized, wait a second, these other products are distracting me. I should just focus on fans. After 15 years, he sold his company. You know, many people, after so many years, you want to sell your company, right? You're lucky if you get some money for it. After 15 years, he sold the company for $500 million, all because of the name. You know, I mean, think about it. If the name was the Big Fan Company or Joe's Fan Company, you think it would be as successful as Big Ass Fans? No. And that's where we start to realize, like this is weird. I never realized that just the name of something or the way you describe something can literally explode sales and you can actually make a ton of money. I mean, wow. It's amazing. I mean, so here's one. How'd you like to invent a product that's amazing? Your competitor, someone you hate, steals the idea from you and makes a fortune while you struggle and eventually have to stop even trying to sell it. How'd you like to have your biggest enemy or competitor make a fortune off your idea, okay? And you struggle.
I would hate that.
Yeah, tell me about it, okay? Well, that's what happened with this story, okay? So there's Post cereals and Kellogg's. And Post and Kellogg's are competitors, okay, cereals. So the head of Post cereals came up with this idea of like, wow, we can make this little cake. We can put jelly in it, like strawberries, blueberries, raspberry. You can put it into a toaster, and it comes up and it's nice and warm. You get this warm cake that you can have for breakfast or snacks. And he was so excited about it. He called it. He didn't call it what we think we called it. Okay, he called it Country Squares. Okay. And he was so excited about this new product coming out that 3 months before he launched it, he promoted it to the media. He said, we have this new product coming out called Country Squares. It's amazing. And it's fun to eat and everything else. And he showed it. Well, the head of Kellogg's looked at that 3 months before it got launched and went like, oh my God, we got to make a product just like this. Is amazing. He told his people, we got to figure out how to make that. Okay, guys, figure out how to make that. And they did. And then he said, we need to come up with a really cool name. Okay, so it pops out of the toaster. So we call it Pop something. Back then there was Andy Warhol, who was a pop artist. So pop art, Pop Tart. Let's call it Pop Tarts, okay? Of course, he launched it a week before Country Squares were launched. Sales exploded. People were like standing in line to buy it, and they sold out like within a week. And they had a ton of product. They couldn't believe how fast they sold out. He actually ran apologies in magazines and newspapers saying, I'm so sorry, we just ran out of Pop-Tarts. We know you love this. Hold on just for a couple of days and there's going to be more Pop-Tarts available. Wow. Pop-Tarts became a blockbuster and sold, it's the hottest selling product that Kellogg's ever had. Okay, Pop-Tarts. Within 6 months, Country Squares, Post stopped selling Country Squares because nobody was buying it. They were waiting for Pop-Tarts to become available, but nobody bought it. And it made, when you take a look at these things, and I've got tons of examples, of how they use brain glue type tools, and suddenly sales explode in ways that you never even expected. I mean, it's amazing. It's really amazing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, brain glue. Where did you come up with that name? And you have a book, so so what gave you that idea? Is it working with branding all your life, or was it, all of a sudden you noticed some commonalities in what you were seeing out there in the branding, and you decided, oh my goodness, that's, because it's a great title, by the way. So tell me a little bit about this book and where you came up with the name and everything.
Well, it's called brain glue because things stick to your brain like glue. And I'll give you an example of a brain glue example, okay? So Jack and Jill went up the
hill.
Okay. And everybody knows that, okay? Well, the last time you heard it, for me, I'm old. It might have been 10, 20, maybe 50 years ago or more. For me, it was more. And yet we remember it like it was yesterday because rhyme sticks to the brain like glue. And so if the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit, okay? That O.J. Simpson got freed from an almost certain guilty verdict because Johnny Cochran, his attorney, came up with this rhyme. And right after the trial, when they let OJ go free, two of the jurors were asked, with all that evidence against OJ, how come you found him not guilty? And one said it as the other one nodded her head in agreement. And she said, we knew if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. The glove didn't fit. We had to acquit. Okay. Rhyme works. It's powerful. So here's how I came up with this. Okay. I'm originally from Montreal. I had an advertising agency. I worked my way up and eventually had clients like Kraft Foods, Timex Watches, Avon Cosmetics, Abbott Laboratories, Seagram's, their world headquarters is there. And so I had the opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America with powerful, logical reasons why you should not do drugs. I'm a logical guy. Most of us out there are logical, right? I discovered that logic is terrible when it comes to selling, believe it or not, okay? I lost. I came up with a fantastic advertising campaign, and they loved it until they saw the competitor, and the competitor blew me away. And it was the guy holding an egg saying, this is your brain. And he cracked the shell and dropped the egg into, you're nodding, we all know this, a sizzling frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? Well, I got scared. First, I said, this is infinitely more powerful than mine. I'm giving logical reasons. There's no logic to this, but there is. Okay, because what are you saying? It's like when you take drugs, what do you get? Well, it fries your brain. Okay, what else gets fried? Eggs. Let's show an egg in a frying pan and say, there's your brain. Okay, there's a sizzling brain. But I didn't know how to do that. So what I did was, it scared me because they don't teach emotional selling in school, and yet emotional selling is literally explodes sales. I'm telling you, it's amazing how many clients and companies I've worked with, how many people I've worked with. People have read my book and they're sending me emails. Please send me emails when you read the book if you apply it and it takes off. We have millionaires. I've created tons of millionaires because of this. But so I realized they don't teach it in school. So I wrote on a 3x5 card, your brain on drugs. So I'd remember the ad. And I put it in a box right next to my computer. I called it the passion box. And I realized that every time I see an ad or when I go into a doctor's office, you get a magazine that you're not used to. Like I see Vogue magazine. My wife would go, do not tear it out of. I said, look at this ad. She said, do not tear it out of the magazine. No. I need it for the passion box. Look at this. She'd sit far away from me. Like, I do not know that guy. Okay. But so after more than 10 years, I had incredible ads and quotes. I put quotes in there also. They're really emotional. And we moved to Southern California, and I met John Gray. And John Gray was telling me that he wrote a book, Men, Women, and Relationships, that was really profound, but nobody was buying the book. And so he changed the title to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and suddenly sold 50 million copies. I mean, it sold 500,000 overnight, but eventually 50 million copies. And that's what made me realize, did just changing the title took him from almost nobody buying the book to suddenly 50 million copies? And I decided when I got home first I had a copy of the book, so I was going to put the book in my passion box, but I said, wait a second, this is a metaphor. Men aren't really from a different planet. I mean, I know some women out there think we're from a different planet. We act like it sometimes, but we're not. Men are not from Mars, okay? But it's a metaphor. And so I dumped the passion box on my bed, and I realized that metaphors is one of 14 brain triggers at the heart of emotional selling. I thought my brain was going to explode, especially because I do advertising and I was a consultant, so I could experiment on clients. You do a lot of stuff works, and you get this idea and you say, well, let me try it. The idea took off so much that people started making money like it was frightening, actually. So I had a pet supplement I was selling online. I remember calling my wife and saying, hey, American Express just charged our credit card $1,000. And she said, well, shut it off, turn it off. Oh, wait a second, we just made 9,000, 10,000. I'll call you right back. I called her back. I told her how much money we make. We were making like $11,000 for the $1,000 we paid. She said, well, spend more. Yes, my wife. Spend more, okay? But I realized that it was the first time I actually made over $1 million, so 7 figures. And it was scary. It was like, did I break the law? Like, what am I doing? Because I changed just a few things and suddenly the sales exploded. But that's what the power of brain glue is. People start to understand that, you have a product or service. And I mean, it's like, Lady Gaga, think of Lady Gaga, they stole the name from Radio Gaga, which is from from another group. So, I mean, it was just like if she was called her name, I forget what her name is, but people would go, okay, fine. But Lady Gaga, you all go, huh? What? Lady Gaga? It's just if we're in business and we're trying to sell something, we want to trigger the emotion centers of the brain. We don't realize it, but when we do, suddenly we get more sales, like a lot more sales. So much is like, it's unbelievable how much sales we have when we, come up with a trigger word.
Yeah, it's funny as you were, giving examples and stuff. It's like, growing up, in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, in the 2000s now. And it's interesting how there are certain brands that will stick with you forever and ever. Like for instance, Nike,
Yep.
just do it.
Yep.
Coca-Cola, it's the real thing.
Yep.
People from Coca-Cola don't realize is they could actually clean your toilet with Coca-Cola. I
That's
would
right.
drink the stuff. But here's an interesting thing is you mentioned something that's very important here. So there's two things that have to happen when somebody sees something. I feel like it really does have to solve a problem. And
Mhm.
then you mentioned another thing called emotion. And why do you think emotion is so important to selling? Because I know like there are certain times where even when I'm selling, like from the stage, for instance, that if something triggers me and something that I've said, I get a little emotional. But why is it? What is it that is it because people can relate? I mean, what is it about emotion that's so important to selling?
Well, there's actually a psychological reason, a physiological reason, and that emotion, decision making is on the emotion side of the brain. In marketing, we say we want people to know, like, and trust you. Well, the reason we're saying that is because if you don't like somebody, would you buy from them? They might have a fantastic product, but you're going, oh, this guy's a jerk. I don't know if I want to buy from them, No, like, and trust is part of it. But in marketing, we often don't have the opportunity. They may not know us yet. Okay. But they like they're in a bookstore and they're looking at books, brain goes. So I don't get to stand there and say, hey, look at me. Yeah, let me tell you about it. I don't get to know, they don't get to know, like, and trust me. Psychologists discovered this. Okay. It's funny because I do actually workshops for neuroscientists, okay, which is kind of cool. And they're blown away by this. Logic is on the left side of the brain, but decision making happens on the right side of the brain where emotions also hang out. So I'll give you an example. When you throw numbers at people, it actually is the left side of the brain. It actually turns off the emotion side. So let me give you an example. Americans discard 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Does it really emotionally affect you? What if I told you that's enough to reach the moon every 3 weeks? Wow, that's a lot. Now you can relate. If I said it's 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour, sounds like a lot, but I mean, I don't relate. I mean, I can relate. It sounds like a lot, but big deal. But if I said it's enough to reach the moon every 3 weeks, which is true, by the way, I mean, that's like, whoa. And so what we want to do is we want to understand that there's certain things that resonate with the brain. I said rhyme, okay? So I have some slogans for mine. Switch your pitch if you want to get rich. Okay, it was pitch. I focused on pitch and I looked up what are rhyme words. So switch your pitch. If you switch rhymes with pitch and rich. Okay, hey, we switch your pitch, you want to get rich. So I wanted to get more sophisticated. So as time went on, I said, so I want a better one. So I'm building desire in people. So what rhymes with desire? Oh, buyer. So I said, light the fire of Brain Glue shows you how to light the fire of desire in your buyers. That was really powerful. Okay. We had a behavioral management firm. We had California's leading behavioral management company. Okay. I'm one of America's leading behavioral management specialists. So I focus on that area. And we had difficulty because we're trying to explain to people what we do in businesses with one of the major programs we had. We have lots of different programs. And we were saying, well, we get your top people in your company to tackle bigger projects than they can normally tackle. Okay. It didn't resonate with people. Then I realized an analogy or metaphor is like a personal trainer. A personal trainer shows up at your house at like 6 o'clock in the morning. They get you to do more push-ups than you could do on your own and more sit-ups than you could do on your own. Okay. So we're like a personal trainer from a psychological standpoint. You know, personal trainer can get you to do more push-ups than you can do on your own. Come on, Lorraine, two more. We can do it. One more. Yes, there you go. You know, we got 50. 50. You never think you could do 50 or 30 push-ups. For me, even 10. Okay, but if a personal trainer showed up, I could. So we're like a personal trainer. It's like we show up. We show up and get your people to tackle bigger projects than they could tackle on their own. When I give them the metaphor, the analogy, suddenly it goes, oh, that's interesting. And it relates more, it sticks to the brain. And that's why, when you understand the power of brain glue, suddenly it became easier for us to sell because clients, you sit there and you look at them and they go like, oh, okay, you're a psychologist. Okay. I don't know. And I could see the look of like, they're not fascinated. They're just trying to figure out their left part of the brain is trying to understand what it is. But once you give them a story and an example, a metaphor, they go, oh, wow, yeah, you're like I said, think of it. If a guy showed up, could he get you to do more push-ups you can do on your own? Yeah. Well, if we show up, you think we can get your people to do bigger projects than they can do on their own? Yeah, that makes sense. And suddenly it resonates,
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. I was thinking, so many things are going through my head right now of things that have stuck with me, but this reminds me of like in I guess the late 70s when record albums were still around. I was like, I worked in a mall, but I worked at this place called Pathmark, which was a grocery store.
Huh?
And I get my paycheck on Friday. And one thing I always did every Friday was go to the record store and buy a record. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes I didn't even know what I really wanted. I usually picked one of the most popular bands, but I also looked at album covers.
Right.
And sometimes I bought because of the album cover.
Yep.
And so I'm walking through the aisle and I see this album with a dog on it. And it says this: we will shoot the dog if you don't buy this album. Now, you couldn't do that today because all the animal rights people would be around.
Right.
But in that day, you could. And
Right.
and it was a National Lampoon. And I had heard of them, and I was more of a Saturday Night Live person, didn't really do anything with National Lampoon. And literally, I bought that album because I didn't want them to shoot the dog. And it was the
Right.
biggest thing because I know they weren't going to shoot the dog, I mean,
Right. Exactly.
but I wonder how many people bought that album. It would be interesting to know the statistics on that. But this is actually fascinating. And I do really believe that it is important. A title is important. And I love what you're doing with your book and how you're helping people with it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how can we get brain glue? Tell me a little bit how we can, get it and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. I have tons of examples, but I make it really easy for people to apply it. That's one of the things that, to me, that's really important is if you're reading it, you have to make it that you're not going to read 100 pages and then get to apply one little thing. So it's short little things that people get to apply. And that's why people love the book, which is exciting for me. If first it's available on Amazon as brainglue.com or brain glue, I mean, but you could also go to yesbrainglue.com and it'll take you to a page that actually gives you lots of information on brain glue, which is kind of cool. So yesbrainglue.com is an easy way to do this. Now, I've got so many fun stories. It's a shame I could talk for an hour on this because they're just like, it's amazing. And it blows their mind. But as you're saying, even with records, it's just, can I give you one quick one?
One quick one, that's it, because I pride myself on
I had 20 minutes. I got so you're talking about records, okay? I was standing on the corner of Winslow, Arizona, such a fine sight to see. It's a girl, my lord. Okay, we know the song. Winslow, Arizona's sales exploded, and Eagles didn't try to sell Winslow, Arizona, but because it's in a song, suddenly people show up for it. So also one more quick one, very quick. So a stay-at-home mom has more than 5 million fans on her Facebook page, and she spends zero. How did she do that? She decided to create a Facebook page, and she was going to call it Mommy Needs Time to Herself. Mommy Needs a Rest. What does Mommy need? Mommy needs vodka. Her page is Mommy Needs Vodka. And I saw a post from a friend shared with me. I was like, oh, wow, Mommy Needs Vodka? Clicked on it, went to her page, loved her post, and that's it. You can have fantastic posts. This is BizCon Social, right? You can love if people have fantastic posts, do you have 5 million fans? She does. So if you can come up with a little a twist like this, mommy needs vodka, suddenly you're going to get a lot of fans. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, yesbrainglue.com is just a fun way to check it out.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of those groups and seen the memes come across Facebook, and it's hysterical. There's a wine one, and then, everybody, there's something for, crazy moms, and there's
Yeah.
something for everything. Anyways, I do want to ask you a couple questions as we part here, but one of the things is there's a lot of people out there that listen to my podcast. Some are just starting out, some are, seasoned entrepreneurs, some are thinking of maybe becoming an entrepreneur. What is one piece of advice that you could give them that would help them move forward?
Um, think of a metaphor or analogy. Okay, finish this sentence. My product or service is just like blank. And start by being as crazy as possible. It's just like a naked man running through your backyard. Maybe not like that. But, have fun first and then back up. Okay. But when you come up with a metaphor or analogy, you're doing two things. One is you're making it easier for someone to remember what it is you're trying to tell them, what's great about your product or service. And two is it sticks to the brain because it's, pick something that people already know. So, I would say start with a metaphor. My product or service is just like blank, and have fun with it because, I have this line: laugh while you make a fortune. Okay, that's the secret. And by the way, laughers are buyers. So if you can get your client or prospect laughing, there's a better chance they're going to buy from you.
Yeah, that's true. Well, again, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really appreciate you. And I wish you luck with the book. And I'm sure you sold a lot so far because I'm actually going to pick it up too myself, just because I love to learn. And so again, and until next week, everyone, this is the Biz Gone Social Podcast, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.